In the rugged expanse of the 1865 Montana Territory, 22-year-old Clara Jimenez found herself the object of scorn within her own family. The bitter winter wind whispered cruel words, echoing the judgments that plagued her existence. Known as the ugly daughter, Clara bore the heavy weight of her family's disdain, especially from her mother, Beatrice, who believed that anything less than beauty was a mark of worthlessness. The biting chill of the air penetrated her skin, but it was the coldness of her family's treatment that numbed her heart, creating a frigid isolation even in a crowded room. That morning, Clara stood by the table in their cramped cabin. The worn wooden surface bore the marks of years and use, its scars seeming almost to mirror the bruises on Clara's spirit. Around her, harsh whispers threaded through the air like arrows aimed directly at her heart. "Look at her brother Raphael sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "What a burden she's become." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, suffocating Clara, making her world shrink to an uncomfortable focus. "Let's send her to the mountain man, Javier Cortez," Beatrice suggested, her tone laced with venom as if she was issuing a decree rather than a suggestion for Clara's fate. Clara's heart plummeted at the thought. Her family, they believed Javier, a solitary man shunned by the rest of society, would be a fool enough to take her as his wife. Their laughter echoed in her mind, a cruel symphony designed to drown her sense of self-worth in their collective mockery. With trembling hands clasped tightly together, Clara swallowed her pride, her belly churning as she realized her fate rested not in her own hands, but in the cruel consensus of her family. The words from her mother etched deeper into her soul, reminding her that she would always be seen as a burden, a flaw in the fabric of their otherwise perfect image. The weight of their judgments bore down on her as she turned away from their discussions. To leave, to join a man perceived as an outcast, felt like another punishment. But what else could she do? With her heart heavy with despair, she embarked on the journey to find Javier Cortez. The bitter wind curled around her like a shroud, the mountain air biting at her skin as she trudged through the knee-deep snow. Pine trees stood sentry along the path, their needles sharp and the world eerily quiet, her family's scorn echoing in her mind as each step carried her further from their judgment. The shadows of the mountains loomed above, dark and imposing, creating a sense of dread that crashed into her with each breath. After what felt like an eternity, Clara finally reached Javier's cabin, which emerged from the trees like a lonely sentinel against the fading light of day. Framed against the pink and orange sky, the cabin looked both inviting and foreboding, a rough-hewn sanctuary where she might find some semblance of comfort, or a prison of another kind. Clara hesitated at the threshold, her knuckles hovering above the rough-hewn surface of the door, thoughts swirling like the snowflakes falling softly around her. Will he see me as my family does? Will he cast me off like a worn-out boot, just another burden? She whispered to herself, reinforcing the narrative her family had woven around her since childhood. The door creaked open, revealing a warm glow that beckoned her inside. Stepping into the cabin, she felt that warmth envelop her, contrasting with the chill that lingered in her bones. But if the warmth was inviting, the sight within quickly chilled her again. Javier Cortez stood by the flickering fire, his rugged appearance fitting perfectly into the wild landscape outside. He was a mountain man, whose sun-drenched hair and weathered skin spoke of years spent battling the harsh elements alone. The deep-set eyes that met hers were stormy and profound, a hint of sorrow hidden behind their ruggedness. Clara felt her heart race, a hot flush sweeping across her cheeks. She felt both drawn to his presence and utterly unworthy to share the same space. "Welcome," he said softly, the gravelly timbre of his voice rich with life yet edged with a poignant weariness. "You must be Clara." A small nod was all she could muster, her throat dry and her hands trembling. Clara felt small and unworthy beneath his scrutiny, an intruder in his solitary world. In his eyes there was a flicker of empathy, a shared understanding of burdens that weighed heavily upon them both. Here, at last, was someone who might see her for who she truly was, rather than the distorted reflection her family had planted deeply in her heart. Days turned to weeks, and Clara began to absorb the rhythm of life within the mountains. Each day brought challenges that dug deeper into her spirit, from chopping wood to tending to the vegetable garden they cultivated together, the soil rich with earthy promise. Tasks which had overwhelmed her now felt almost sacred, a way to forge her identity anew. With each humble chore she felt the fog of worthlessness begin to lift. It was as if the mountain air itself was cleansing her soul. As she worked alongside Javier, Clara began to learn about the environment she found herself in, the way the seasons dictated life, how the earth breathed in harmony with the sun and sky. Each evening, they would share stories by the fire, the warmth of the flames illuminating their faces as they revealed secrets of their pasts. Clara spoke of the pain and ridicule of her upbringing, while Javier spoke of his grief, the death of his wife having left scars that ran deeper than any wound. "Out here, Clara, nobody cares about beauty," Javier remarked one evening, his voice low and calming like the rustle of leaves in the wind. "What matters is the strength you carry in your heart." His words soothed her insecurities like a balm, reinforcing the notion that perhaps beauty could be more than skin deep. This man, a stranger, an outcast, saw her in ways she had yearned for throughout her life, as if every word he conjured melted away the disdain that had been heaped upon her for years. Yet even as her spirit began to mend, the spectre of her family remained a shadow lurking at the edges of her newfound reality. One fateful evening, as she harvested herbs near a glistening creek, Clara wrestled with thoughts of her mother's judgment. The echoes of their disdain reverberated within her mind, like thunder threatening to unleash a storm. But kneeling by the cool water, surrounded by flora bursting with life, she felt a surge of rebellion against their judgment. With trembling hands, Clara gathered the herbs, vowing to not only carve out a place for herself, but to transcend the narrow definitions her family had placed upon her. Here, amid the wilderness, she felt transformed, reborn into the woman she was always meant to be. Clarity sparked like the sun rising above the mountains, illuminating paths she had only dreamed of traveling. Through Javier's unwavering support, she began to challenge her inner dialogue. He saw her as she truly was, intelligent, capable, and worthy of love and respect. The vibrant embrace of nature and the growing bond between them rendered her family's scrutiny suddenly smaller, weaker against the backdrop of this wild beauty. Days melted into each other, the seasons swirling around them like the kaleidoscope of life itself, as Clara's confidence grew stronger, blossoming with each trial faced together. And while doubts lingered like shadows among the trees, Clara resolved to uncover the depth of her worth, not only as a woman but as a healer, a partner, and a person brimming with potential. Please confirm if you would like to move on to Power Block 2, Jasper's Introduction. Act 1 Continuation, approximately 8,000 characters, 14.5% of total. Or if there are any adjustments you would like to make to the current block. Hello, my dear friend. This is Jasper Ashwood, your narrator of Mountain Tales. Before we start, make sure you subscribe and drop a comment below telling me where you're tuning in from. A big hug to you all, and I hope you enjoy the story. As Clara Jimenez stood at the threshold of Javier Cortez's cabin, she felt a mix of fear and anticipation settle in her gut. Would this man, this mountain recluse, see her as her family did? Would he cast her off like a worn-out boot, just another burden? The chilling wind whipped around her, whispering doubts that her courage struggled to withstand. The door creaked open, revealing the warmth of a flickering fire within. Tall shadows danced on the walls as Clara stepped in, crossing the threshold from uncertainty into the unknown. Javier was a striking figure. He stood before her with an intensity that struck her like an electric jolt. His rugged face bore the marks of a hard life, sun-beaten skin, a beard fringed with grey. But more compelling were the eyes, deep-set and stormy, a mirroring of the emotions tumultuous within her. Clara felt an inexplicable pull toward him, a magnetic force that was both alarming and comforting. "Welcome," he said, his voice deep and resonant, the kind of voice that commanded attention yet invited trust. "They sent you, didn't they?" All Clara could manage was a small, reluctant nod. "Yes, I'm Clara. I was expecting a challenge, not a product of family scorn," he replied, an unexpected warmth lighting his eyes. "I assure you, I take only what I need, and nothing more." With that simple assurance, the weight of Clara's misgivings began to lift, but the remnants of doubt remained like wisps of smoke in her mind. She saw the flickering embers in the fireplace, the warmth inviting her as she watched Javier move about his home, his every action deliberate, his movements fluid. Here, she noted, was a man who seemed comfortable in his solitude, reflective of the wilderness that surrounded them. In the days that followed, Clara began to adapt to her new life, immersing herself in the rhythms of nature and labor alongside Javier. The flickering shadows of doubt slowly transformed into the vibrant colors of belonging. Early mornings were filled with melodies of nature awakening, a chorus of birds heralding a new day as light filtered through the tall pines, casting intricate patterns on the ground. Every day was a lesson, and each chore became a way to connect more deeply with herself and this wild land, breaking free of the expectations imposed upon her. Javier quietly observed Clara as she tackled each responsibility with determination, even unearthing a natural talent for tending to the herbs and plants that surrounded their home. "You have a golden touch with nature," he remarked one morning as they gathered wild herbs. "These will serve us well and might help others too." Clara beamed at his praise, her heart swelling with pride, a feeling that had been foreign to her. "I've always loved plants," she shared, excitement coloring her cheeks. "In the past, they were my escape, but I never really realized just how much they could offer until now." The weeks turned into months, transforming the landscape from a bleak winter into a tapestry of rebirth as spring kicked in. Clara's confidence blossomed under Javier's guidance. With every sunrise, she felt more at home in her body, more at peace with her choices. She engaged the land with intention, making friends with its critters, learning the rhythm of the seasons. Evenings transformed into hours, filled with laughter and shared experiences. Clara and Javier would often sit by the fire, warmth radiating between them as they dug deeper into their pasts and dreams. Clara shyly prodded Javier to share stories of his life alone in the wilderness, while he encouraged her to express the aspirations she once hid away beneath layers of shame. "Tell me, Clara," he asked one starry night, looking at her with those penetrating eyes that seemed to see into her very soul. "What do you dream of? What is it you wish to become?" "I want to help people," she confessed, the words tumbling out before her courage could confine them. "I want to use what I've learned about these herbs to heal, not just for ourselves but for those in need. I want to show them beauty comes from strength." Javier nodded thoughtfully, a rare smile breaking across his weathered face. "You're destined for greater things than this cabin, Clara. I can see it in your eyes." She felt emboldened by his words, like a fire igniting in her belly, compelling her to take the next theatrical step. The thought delighted her, spinning visions of a vibrant community thriving together. One morning, as the birds celebrated the arrival of spring with their cheerful songs, Clara awoke with newfound determination. Over the next few weeks, Clara began to visit the nearby homesteads, carrying small baskets filled with remedies, syrups for coughs, poultices for wounds, and soothing teas for ailments. As she traversed the rugged trails, she discovered the beauty of connectivity, the joy of sharing knowledge and skills that blossomed among the locals. The townsfolk were initially skeptical of the ugly daughter who had found her way to a mountain man, their scrutiny palpable. With nervous anticipation, Clara approached the first neighbors, hands trembling as she presented her offerings. One family in particular, the Merricks, were known for their obstinacy and suspicion toward newcomers. But Clara's warmth and genuine nature began to melt the rigidity surrounding their hearts. With each grateful smile and soft-spoken thank you, Clara felt the chains of her family's disdain begin to shatter, piece by piece. One woman, recently diagnosed with a cough that clung like winter's chill, found relief in Clara's herbal concoctions. Before long, rumors of the mountain man's medical marvel began to spread through the valley like wildfire. Yet even amid this budding success, shadows lingered at the edges of her progress. One clear morning, while bringing herbs back from the neighboring homestead, the air shifted, heavy and foreboding. Clara sensed an uneasiness before she even saw them. The weight of her past was beaming down through the valley once more. Beatrice and her brothers had been silent for too long, and whispers of her family's scorn bubbled beneath the surface of the community, threatening to unravel all she had begun to build. Clara quickened her pace, thoughts racing as she grappled with the dread of their return to her life. She needed to protect her newfound freedom and identity, a life reclaimed after years spent in shackles. As spring melted into summer, Clara began fortifying her resolve. Every day as she worked beside Javier, learning how to traverse both the wilds and her heart, she silently vowed to confront whatever her family dared to bring her way. She yearned to reclaim not only herself, but the very meaning of family and worth centered in truth rather than projection. Then one sultry afternoon, as Clara gathered herbs in her cherished spot near the babbling creek, she sensed an uneasy current in the air. The rippling waters mirrored her anxieties, the sunlight dancing atop the surface, moments so bright yet warning of a darkness creeping ever closer. Her instincts stirred. She turned just in time to see Beatrice stride into the clearing, a host of shadows trailing in her wake. Clara's heart raced as fear slithered into her mind, but she stood her ground, her spine straightening with resolved fortitude. The tendrils of panic waded through her. Each breath served as a reminder of how far she had come. With Beatrice flanked by Raphael and one of his friends, Clara sensed the weight of judgment looming larger than the mountains around them. "What kind of existence is this?" Beatrice's voice sliced through the air, a sharp knife piercing the serene sanctity of her haven. "You've abandoned us, Clara. You are still nothing but a burden, a mockery." Clara felt anger seep into her bones as she clenched her fists, grounding herself against the emotional tide. "This is my life now, Mother," she replied, the determination in her voice ringing strong, echoing among the treetops. "I have learned to heal, to thrive amidst the wild, rather than be a reflection of your scorn." "Family doesn't belittle one of their own," Clara countered, unwavering, her courage igniting like wildfire. "I'm no longer your shame." Silence filled the space between mother and daughter, thickening moments into eternity as Clara met her mother's burning gaze. A flame danced in Beatrice's eyes, seeking to provoke, but Clara's resolute stance stood strong. With her heart pounding, Clara felt Javier draw closer, an anchor, his presence grounding her in a sea of doubt. "You're wrong to come here," he stated, his voice steady and unwavering. "Clara has found her worth, and you cannot take that from her." The fury in Beatrice's expression flickered, but did not extinguish. She turned her focus back to Clara, determined to press her advantage. "You cannot escape us, Clara. Your place is with family, not this man." Resoluteness burned inside Clara, warming her soul amidst the shadows as she took a determined step toward her mother. "You do not determine my worth. I am not a piece of property to be cast aside when I do not meet expectations. I am becoming who I was meant to be, a healer, a friend, a partner." The air was electric, tension coiling tightly as the world around them faded, leaving only the fierce confrontation spiraling between mother and daughter. Clara's heart raced as she finally found her voice, a resonant declaration of self-worth that emanated from depths, transformed by her connection to the wilderness and to Javier. "I am no longer what you fear," Clara asserted. "I am not your shame, I am my strength." As the words settled into the clearing like the settling sun, she saw something flicker in Beatrice's eyes, a momentary confusion, as if her mother had begun to grapple with the very narrative she had created. With fierce determination, Clara made a silent vow in that moment. She would redefine her existence, break free from the chains of judgment that had held her captive for so long. As summer beckoned forth blooms of life, Clara embraced not just the warmth of the season, but the blossoming of her true self. The mountains stood as witnesses to her declaration, a powerful shift echoing throughout the world around her. And as the shadows retreated against the light, Clara knew she would face whatever came next with a heart grounded in resilience, empowered to reclaim her destiny. Please confirm if you would like to move on to Block 3. Trust Building. Transformation begins. Approximately 12,000 characters, 21.8% of total. Or if there are any adjustments you would like to make to the current block. In the aftermath of Clara's stand against Beatrice, the air around the cabin began to hum with a renewed energy, an unshakable resolve that arose from speaking her truth. Days passed in a haze of warmth as summer enveloped the mountains in vibrant greens and bursts of wildflowers. Each evening, Clara relished the comforting glow of the cabin fire, particularly those moments spent with Javier, their bond deepening as they embraced the beauty of their surroundings. Javier was the epitome of a mountain man. His strength radiated not just physically, but also in the way he navigated conversations, whether through laughter or contemplation. Their shared labor quickly morphed into companionship. Every task became a dance of camaraderie. Each smile exchanged a brushstroke in the vast tapestry of their entwined lives. Clara thrived in this new rhythm, weaving her purpose into the fabric of their days, as if the very land were nourishing her spirit. Every morning, sunlight spilled through the window like liquid gold, enticing Clara to rise and greet the day with purpose. Birdsong echoed through the pines, and she often found herself wandering to the herbal garden that she had cultivated, the vibrant greens appearing like jewels in the morning light. She would tend to her plants, running her fingers through the soft leaves, whispering to them as if they could understand. The herbs became her confidants, each one holding stories of healing and life. "Do you remember the first time we walked through the woods?" Javier asked one morning as he joined her in the garden, his arms folded comfortably as he leaned against the wooden fence. "I do," Clara replied, a smile lifting the corners of her mouth. I felt so lost, so out of place. Everything seemed foreign, like I was intruding on a world that didn't want me. He chuckled softly, his gaze reflective. Sometimes, the very places that seem hostile become our greatest allies. Nature has a way of teaching us about resilience, just as you learned through your experiences. Clara contemplated those words. She had entered these woods a shadow of herself, but now, under Javier's steadfast presence, she began to shine in full color. As time passed, Clara decided it was time to share the knowledge she was gathering in this vibrant world. Inspired by her growth, she began to hold workshops where she could teach others about the healing properties of local herbs. The first gathering took shape around an old oak in a sun-drenched clearing near their cabin. Clara watched as neighbors began to appear, women and children milling about and casting cautious glances her way. The criticisms she had faced faded back into the past. In this moment, she sought to build something new with her own hands, a community founded on healing rather than disdain. As whispers floated through the crowd, Clara felt her heart race. Perhaps it was the echoes of past judgment that ignited her nerves. But she pushed through, drawing on their curiosity to fill the spaces where doubts threatened to creep in. She cleared her throat, ready to engage her listeners. Thank you for coming, Clara began, her voice warm yet firm. Today we will be exploring the healing plants that grow around us and how they can support you and your families. The murmurs quieted as Clara took a step forward, gesturing toward the small gatherings of herbs she had carefully arranged. One by one, she introduced the plants, comfrey, yarrow, and chamomile, describing their uses and encouraging questions. She watched the initial skepticism waver as the group leaned in, intrigued by the knowledge she wielded. What about the spinewort? A young girl asked, her curiosity sparking a light in the crowd. Clara smiled, her heart swelling with joy. This wasn't just a lesson. It was an exchange of knowledge. Spinewort is a wonderful herb for soothing discomfort and inflammation. If prepared correctly, it can help heal minor injuries and ease pain. As Clara continued, she shared stories of how these plants had not only healed her, but also of the importance of respect for nature's gifts. The gathering soon sprang to life, enjoyment blooming among the participants as they experimented with making poultices and blends. Fears dissolved like morning mist beneath the rising sun, and Clara felt a surge of empowerment in being able to contribute to their lives. In the aftermath of the workshop, Clara felt lighter. A weight she didn't realize she had been carrying slipped away, transformed into winds of connection. She noticed the way her neighbors began to regard her, not with judgment, but with a respect she had long yearned for. As summer deepened, Clara continued to welcome neighbors into her life, opening the door to her cabin, sharing not only her knowledge, but a bit of her heart. Javier, steadfast as ever, stood by her side as she shed her vulnerabilities and wove new threads into the fabric of the community. Yet with each passing day, there persisted a quiet dread, a shadow creeping at the edges of her newfound happiness, a shadow that bore the face of her family. Clara could feel it linger, an ever-present reminder that her past was still interwoven with her future. The whispers of her mother's scorn ricocheted in her mind as the summer sun began to set toward autumn. The past shapes us, but it does not have to define us, Javier had said on a particularly warm evening, breaking the silence between them as they watched the sun dip below the horizon. I know, Clara murmured, looking toward the last rays of light. But sometimes shadows return in unexpected ways, and I worry for what my family may bring. Javier turned to her, a deep intensity in his gaze. You have grown so much stronger. Whatever challenges you face, remember that you are not who they say you are. You are Clara, a healer, a force in this world. The words settled in Clara's heart like seeds planted in rich soil. She knew he was right. But still, a part of her struggled against the fear of confrontation, the potential rejection. As autumn wound its way around the hills, bringing a touch of chill to the air, Clara cultivated her garden with renewed fervor, while simultaneously fostering the once uneasy relationship with Javier. Together they forged forward, taking long walks through the crisp air, gathering the last of the herbs before winter settled in, sharing stories, dreams, and working alongside one another as partners. But as Clara prepared for another day of teaching, the rustle of leaves outside sounded a disquieting note, bringing her heart into a rigid stance. She could sense changes in the atmosphere, presaging the return of those she could not escape. On a particularly cloudy day, Clara felt drawn to the path near the river where they often harvested water. But today, it felt different. The air was thick with tension, every crunch of a fallen leaf beneath her feet exacerbating the weight in her stomach. She arrived at the riverbank, watching clouds gather like the swirling chaos of thoughts in her mind. "Clara?" A voice broke through the trees, harsh and familiar. Clara whirled around at the sound of her mother's voice, accompanied by Raphael and another silhouette that she instantly recognized, one of her mother's allies. "Mother," Clara said, demeanor shifting uneasily as she straightened her back defiantly, determined not to show fear. "Why do you persist in these foolish endeavors?" Beatrice demanded, her tone cold and slicing. "You embarrass us all by cavorting with this man and pretending to be something you are not." "Those are your words, not mine," Clara replied firmly, her hands trembling slightly but her voice unwavering. "I am not your possession, nor am I defined by your expectations. You will come home with us," Beatrice pressed, stepping closer, seeking to assert her dominance. "We cannot allow you to remain here in this delusional state, turning your back on family." "Family?" Clara's response was laced with fire. "You're the ones who turned your backs on me. I have found my place here, an identity that is my own. I will not allow you to dictate what my life should be." The words reverberated in the air around them, pregnant with defiance. Beatrice hesitated, a flicker of doubt casting shadows across her face. Clara seized that moment, charging forward with renewed courage. "You taught me what family should not look like. I am no longer bound by those constructs. I belong here, with Javier and this community, who values me for who I truly am, not for what I was born into." Javier emerged from the shadows, quietly assessing the situation, his heart pounding as he prepared to support Clara. "Clara is not your shame," he asserted calmly, stepping closer while still allowing her to take the lead. Raphael stepped forward, his tension palpable, but Clara stood firm, indignant, no longer willing to back down. "The world you want for me is not a life worth living," she challenged. "You will rue the day you chose to defy us," Beatrice hissed, the venom in her tone manifesting a wickedness that Clara could no longer fear. Clara felt her heart pound, yet steadiness wrapped around her resolute heart. "You're wrong to believe that I will falter. My happiness, my healing, is far stronger than your hatred, one that I choose to embrace day after day." As Clara and Javier stood side by side, the shadows of confrontation began to recede, her past feeling lighter, as if the burdens she had carried were being washed away by the river beside her. With that, Clara understood as the river flowed past her, she too could move forward, unencumbered by the weight of her history. It was time to begin anew, to solidify who she was destined to be, a healer, a friend, and a woman who refused to be wronged by fear. And as the shadows retreated further, Clara felt an empowered resolve build within her. In that shared moment with Javier, she recognized that their bond was not just a connection, it was a profound force capable of rewriting her narrative, one that began with fierce courage and self-acceptance. Please confirm if you would like to move on to Block 4, Deepening Bond. Backstory completion. Approximately 12,000 characters, 21.8% of total. Or if there are any adjustments you would like to make to the current block. In the days following Clara's stand against her mother, a resolve bloomed inside her like the wildflowers that sprinkled the mountainside. With each passing sunrise, she felt as though the burden of her past was being lifted, like mist rising from the river under the warm morning sun. The air around her was charged with the vibrancy of life and possibility, and she stood ready to embrace whatever came next. The once muted whispers of her community were now fading into echoes of laughter, camaraderie, and support. Clara devoted herself to building bridges with her neighbors, sharing her knowledge of herbal remedies and healing practices. Each workshop she conducted drew more townsfolk who had previously regarded her with skepticism, but were increasingly curious about the woman who had defied expectations. Together with Javier, they began to host gatherings that became a tapestry of knowledge, woven with threads of shared experiences and laughter. Clara recognized a burgeoning friendship among attendees, a connection that tied them together in their shared ventures of healing. Each class brought new faces and old names drawn back into her life. The once resentful chatter faded, replaced by the warm statements of gratitude and camaraderie, a newfound respect blossoming amidst the wildflowers. Despite the shifts and warmth surrounding her, Clara was still keenly aware of her mother's lingering presence. It loomed like a shadow at the periphery, a reminder of the expectations and judgments that had crafted her early identity. With every passing day, Clara worked to establish her own sense of self, one grounded in purpose rather than fear. One day, after a particularly successful workshop, Clara stood alongside Javier at the riverbank, watching the water rush by. "The community is starting to see the value in what we do," she said, a hint of disbelief threading her words. "They're beginning to trust me," Javier grinned, leaning against a smooth rock. "You earned this, Clara. You've shown them who you really are, a force to be reckoned with." Clara smiled back, but a flicker of uncertainty tightened in her chest. "But what if Beatriz comes back? What if she tries to tear this apart, tries to reclaim me?" "Let her come," Javier replied, an unwavering steadiness in his voice. "You're not the same woman she left behind. You're stronger, and you've created a space that values you for who you truly are." The confidence in Javier's words soothed her, and as they walked back toward the cabin, Clara felt the threads of connection around her strengthen. She was determined to continue building her life, grounded in authenticity without apology. Days turned into weeks, and the community's acceptance of Clara blossomed. Her spirit filled the cabin with warmth and laughter, as she and Javier became a cohesive team, seamlessly transitioning between work and personal life. Clara found joy in the small moments they shared, cooking together, exploring the wilderness, and investing their energy into the routines of everyday life. Javier often shared his knowledge of the wilderness with her. "This world is a reflection of us, Clara," he remarked one evening as they mined the beauty of the sunset on a cliffside. "Just as these mountains stand tall, so too should you." With each lesson, Clara discovered that nature could teach her far more than she had ever learned from her past. She reveled in tracking animals, identifying the subtle language of the landscape, and developing a keen intuition about the world around her. She learned how to navigate the mountain trails, recognize the call of a hawk, and differentiate between the feel of various plants. It was a transformation rooted in resilience, not just of the land but of herself. Yet, as always, shadows lingered just beyond the horizon, cloaked in uncertainty. One chilly morning, Clara received a devastating letter slipped under the cabin door. The paper was stark white and bore her mother's unmistakable handwriting. "Clara," it read, "your father has fallen ill. I need you to return home. This is not only my request, but also an order. Family is of utmost importance, and you need to be here for him." Clara's heart raced and her mind spun. This letter had the power to pull her back into the very chaos she had fought so hard to escape. The tenuous balance she had worked to establish now felt fragile at the risk of unraveling. "What is it?" Javier's voice broke through the turmoil inside her as he entered the cabin, oblivious of the disheartened expression etching itself onto Clara's face. "My mother," Clara began, holding the letter in trembling hands. "My father has fallen ill. She wants me to return home." Javier's expression shifted, concern etched across his face as he took the letter from Clara's hands, scanning it with furtive eyes. "What do you want to do?" he asked gently, carefully ensuring she felt in control. "I want to help my father," Clara admitted, looking out of the window toward the expanse of the mountains. "But I know that going back will reintroduce me to the very judgments I fought to leave behind." "Sometimes helping family means standing your ground," Javier suggested as he stepped closer, the warmth of his presence bolstering her resolve. "If you decide to go, remind them who you are and the value you've found. Show them how you've changed." Clara bit her lip, uncertainty gnawing at the edges of her mind. "But what if they attempt to undermine me again? What if my mother tries to pull me back into that world? Then you stand together with the community you've built." "You are not alone, Clara," Javier insisted, a fierceness underlying his tone that fortified her heart. After a long pause, Clara took a deep breath, considering the implications of her choices. "I don't want my journey to end here. I've found my purpose, Javier. I want to be there for my father, yes, but on my own terms." Javier met her gaze, unwavering and resolute. "Whatever you decide, remember that you can carry your strength with you. You are far more than their judgments." In the quiet space that followed, Clara felt inspiration stir within her. She closed her eyes, envisioning the path ahead. "I will go," she finally declared, confidence swelling inside her. "I will help my father, but this time I will return not just as Clara, but as the healer I've become, grounded in truth." The feeling rippled through her like a rush of wind. She could feel the strength of the mountains behind her, their truest essence illuminating a pathway back to her past, a pathway she would tread without fear. She could help her father while standing firmly in the conviction of who she had become, As Clara prepared for the journey back, she dedicated herself to solidifying the ties with her community, sharing recipes, plants, and stories about the healing powers of herbs that sustained her. She wrote letters to friends and neighbors back home, ensuring her teachings remained alive, inspiring others while expanding the web of connection across the valley. When the day of departure came, Clara felt a rush of activity surging through her, anticipation of returning home mingling with trepidation of confronting the past. She set out on horseback, Javier riding beside her, steadfast and unwavering like the mountains that followed them. Days passed, and as they approached her family's homestead, Clara could feel tension building with every step. The excitement blended with anxiety, leaving her with an unsettled heart. "Well, here we are," Clara murmured, glancing at Javier beside her. She could see the homestead from a distance. "Ready or not, huh? Just remember that your worth is not defined by them," he reinforced gently, drawing nearer to her side, his presence fortifying her pulse. As she dismounted, Clara noticed the familiar scent of the homestead, a blend of hanging herbs, wood smoke, and the faint warmth of home. This was her territory, a place she had known intimately, yet had longed to escape. But today was different. Today was about reclaiming her space. As they approached, Beatrice stepped out of the cabin, eyes narrowing upon Clara, as if expecting some failure. Yet Clara stood firm, her heart steady, infused with purpose. "I have come to see Father," Clara stated, her voice steady and unshakable. "He's inside," Beatrice replied curtly, a flicker of uncertainty coursing beneath her veneer of control. "We're lucky he's still with us." As Clara entered the cabin, memories flooded her, glistening laughter, warm gatherings, and the weight of expectations that had long bound her heart. She approached her father, who lay feverish on the bed, his breath shallow and labored. As she knelt beside him, the heat radiating from his brow reassured her of her purpose. "Father," she whispered softly, reaching out to check his forehead. Tears brimmed in her eyes as she recalled the warmth of his embrace, the comfort he had provided even amid chaos. "Clara," he murmured, blinking awake slightly, "you're here. How good it is to see you." "I'm here, Papa," she said, a sense of relief threading through her words. "I'm here to help." Javier stood in the doorway, a quiet sentinel waiting in the wings. Clara could see the respect and edge of concern on his face. She felt a safe haven in knowing that he believed in her, not just as a healer but as a daughter ready to stand against the storm. With intent focus, Clara gathered her herbal remedies, knowledge swirling in her mind like the rustling leaves outside. "I will find what you need to heal. We will do this together." As Clara began her ministrations on her father, a palpable shift surrounded the room. Their bond felt charged with love and forgiveness, burgeoning with the hope of recovery. In that moment, the shackles of the past began to shatter, like ice melting with the warmth of spring. And with that, Clara took her first steps toward reclaiming her existence, not just as a daughter but as the woman she had become, a healer intertwined with the love of her family and community, capturing the very essence of resilience blooming within. As the days passed and the healing began, Clara understood that this moment was merely another chapter in her journey, a journey that had only just begun. Please confirm if you would like to move on to Block 5, Rising Tension. Confrontation approaches, approximately 8,000 characters, 14.5% of total. Or if there are any adjustments you would like to make to the current block. As Clara settled into her role as a healer, the shadows of her past began to creep back into her thoughts. The warmth of her father's recovery filled the cabin, sunlight streaming through the windows, yet Clara felt an unsettling tension lurking just outside their sanctuary. Every sunrise brought renewed hope, but also the persistent fear of her mother, Beatrice, whose disapproval lingered like a storm cloud over her newfound independence. Javier was a steadfast presence, assisting Clara in caring for her father and cultivating the herbal remedies that now defined her. Each day he helped her gather herbs and prepare tinctures, his calm demeanor providing strength when self-doubt threatened her resolve. But Clara could still feel her mother's looming presence, warning her of what awaited if she chose to leave again. One afternoon, as Clara tended to her father's bedside, Javier walked in with a fresh bundle of lavender. "You're doing an incredible job," he said, a warm smile gracing his lips. "You help him more than you know." Clara looked at Javier, grateful for his faith in her. "Thank you, but I worry about what will happen if Beatrice finds out. She may try to force me back to her world, one that suffocates me." "She can't take away who you've become," he asserted, stepping closer. You're stronger than you think. Remember, you've built a life here, a family that sees you for who you truly are. As Clara contemplated his words, a shiver of apprehension zipped through her. Then, one fateful afternoon, when the sun dipped low and painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, a letter arrived. It lay on the cabin's floor like an omen, its distinct handwriting unmistakable. Clara's heart sank as she picked it up, the weight of its demand pressing heavily against her chest. Clara, your father is unwell and I need you home. You have a duty to your family. You are abandoning us, and it won't be tolerated. Clara handed the letter to Javier, frustration contorting her features. What am I supposed to do? Go back to that life? She has the audacity to dictate my choices. Javier's expression grew somber as he read the letter. You have a choice to make. You can either return to her expectations and live in a cage, or you can stay where you are valued. But you must choose wisely. Clara felt conflicted, her heart heavy with the burden of responsibility. My father needs me. I don't want to turn my back on him, but I refuse to sacrifice my identity to appease her. I know it's difficult, Javier said, his voice softening, but think of what it cost you to break free. Remember the strength you found when you chose to step into the light. As days passed, Clara grappled with emotions swirling within her, a whirlpool of fear, love, and defiance. The impending confrontation with her mother loomed, sharpening her resolve. If she chose to confront Beatrice, it would require every ounce of courage she possessed. The day arrived, and Clara felt a mix of anxiety and determination surging through her. She traveled back to her childhood home, her heart pounding with the weight of what she was about to face. Standing at the door, Clara hesitated before knocking, her breath hitching in her throat. She was prepared to challenge the very foundations of her upbringing. Beatrice opened the door with a steely expression that quickly morphed into surprise. Clara, she gasped, before her eyes narrowed. You've returned. I came to speak with you, Clara replied, her voice firm. You need to understand where I stand now. I cannot go back to the way things were. Beatrice's brow furrowed. You must be joking. You have duties here. Your family is hurting, and you can't just abandon your responsibilities. Responsibility doesn't mean sacrificing who I am, Clara countered, stepping further into the house. What I've built here, with my father and the community, is real. You can't just expect me to conform to your version of family. Family comes first. You don't understand the burden you've placed on us. Beatrice pressed, her voice rising. Clara took a deep breath, feelings of anger and hurt bubbling to the surface. And you don't understand what I've endured because of your expectations. I am not a pawn for you to manipulate, Mother. I won't be controlled any longer. Silence fell between them, tension crackling like dry twigs ready to snap. Beatrice's facade faltered, revealing a hint of vulnerability. I did what I thought was best for you, Clara. I wanted to protect you. I don't want protection anymore, Clara declared, her voice unwavering. I want to be empowered. My healing is not just about remedies, it's about identifying my worth. Your fear has held me captive for too long. You think you can just run away from your obligations? Beatrice said, her tone incredulous. You have no idea the sacrifices your father and I have made. Sacrifices? Clara shook her head, feeling the past's anger rise. Those sacrifices nearly crushed me. I've lost myself trying to fulfill a role that was never mine. A flicker of uncertainty appeared in Beatrice's eyes, surprise mixed with something softer. Clara pressed her advantage. I love my father. I want to help him, but not in a way that means losing myself again. I never wanted to lose you, Beatrice whispered, her voice breaking. Clara stepped forward, heart pounding with the weight of the moment. Then don't make the same mistakes again, Mother. Accept who I am, and I promise we can find a way to be family again without the lies, Clara urged, an earnest plea resonating in her heart. A hesitant silence passed between them, the once clear lines beginning to blur. Clara felt the tension dissipate slightly as she held her breath, watching hope flicker in Beatrice's eyes. Let's try, Clara suggested softly, her heart racing. One step at a time. I want to learn to support you too, and perhaps you can learn to accept me as I am. Beatrice nodded slowly, the fight visibly melting from her posture. I don't know if I can, but I want to try. Clara felt a rush of warmth fill the space between them, a connection she had longed for throughout her journey of healing. That's all I ask, Mother. Just a chance. Some things may take time, but together we can face anything. As they stood there, the tension that had once separated them began to dissolve. Neither had the answers yet, But Clara felt the threads of reconciliation weaving into their fractured relationship, a new bond beginning to take shape. Together they would navigate the complexities of love, acceptance, and family. With her heart poised in hope for the future, Clara understood that healing did not happen in a vacuum. It required the strength to confront and embrace the ones you love, even when it meant risking everything they once were. Please confirm if you would like to move on to Block 6, Climax, Resolution and Miracle Finale, approximately 5,000 characters, 9% of total, or if there are any adjustments you would like to make to the current block. As Clara left the reconciliation with her mother, the weight on her heart felt lightened, yet the uncertainty of the future loomed large. Weeks passed, and with her father's recovery underway, Clara found solace in the embrace of her community. It was a sanctuary, an affirmation of the choices she made to embrace her identity as a healer. On a golden afternoon, Clara wandered through the fields that surrounded her home, basking in the warmth of the sun. The vibrant landscape was alive with sounds, birds chirping merrily, bees buzzing among blossoming flowers, and laughter ringing out from nearby homes. Clara embraced the beauty, feeling the empowering sense of belonging that had blossomed since her return. Javier was hard at work nearby, meticulously tending to the herbs that filled their small garden. His strong shoulders glistened with the warmth of the sun as he worked. Clara couldn't help but smile, contemplating how both the land and their relationship were vibrant, growing, and full of potential. "Could use a hand, or are you just here to admire?" he called playfully, concerning himself with the blooming petals. "I could do both," Clara replied with a laugh, feeling grateful for his light-heartedness. "But I think I'll put these gentle hands to work." As they worked side by side, an unspoken bond deepened. Each moment they shared filled Clara with warmth and hope. She felt safe and cherished, a sharp contrast to the years spent feeling controlled and unloved. Days turned into weeks, and as Clara noticed her father's strength return, she marveled at the resilience of their family unit, one that was still fragile but growing stronger with care. One afternoon, Clara decided it was time to reach out to her mother again. The previous conversation echoed in her mind, reminding her of the fragile yet promising reconciliation they had started. Gathering her courage, Clara headed back to her childhood home. When Beatriz opened the door, surprise washed over her features. "Clara," she breathed. Skepticism lurked beneath the surface, but was softened by a longing for connection. "Mother," Clara began, feeling the weight of vulnerability as she stood at the threshold. "I wanted to invite you to see what I've been cultivating with Father. It's beautiful here." The hesitation in Beatriz's eyes made Clara's heart race, but she pressed on. "I want you to see that we are building something new, not just with crops, but in our family too." "I don't know if I can accept it," Beatriz said quietly, moving aside to let Clara in. "You've made your choices. I still need more time to understand." "That's all I ask too," Clara replied earnestly. "Let's take it step by step. You don't have to understand everything right now. Just be here with us." Beatriz nodded slowly. The corners of her lips turned upward faintly as they walked together out to the garden, nearing Clara's father, who was tending to the plants. "Look, Clara and Beatriz have come to help," he exclaimed, his eyes brightening at the unexpected yet welcome sight. As they kneeled in the garden among rows of green, laughter broke the silence and they worked together, their hands interacting not just with soil, but with the fragile threads of connection that had once been frayed. Each seed they planted symbolized hope, trust, and the potential for a new beginning. Clara felt her heart swell as they began to share stories about growth, mistakes, and the healing that accompanied resilience. She could see light combing through the cracks of her mother's solitude, hope finding its way back into their shared narrative. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden glow on their newfound unity. Clara realized that healing was not simply a destination. It required continuous reflection, effort, and the willingness to confront past wounds. As the weeks continued, their efforts flourished not just in the garden, but within the relationship they were nurturing. Beatriz began to understand Clara's journey and the importance of true freedom, while Clara embraced her mother's wisdom, recognizing its value amid differences. Together they had forged a bond strengthened by love, a healing journey that promised growth and acceptance for all. When Clara looked back at her past, she no longer viewed it with resentment, but rather as the roots that had shaped her. She had emerged not merely as a daughter, but as a healer, a partner, and a woman fully alive. As the days rolled into months, Clara knew that the seeds they had sown together carried the enduring promise of new beginnings. She had faced the storms and reframed her narrative, transforming pain into resilience. Clara's journey through love, healing, and acceptance continued, each day granting her the hope to keep writing her story alongside those she loved. Clara's journey from isolation to connection illustrates the transformative power of love, reconciliation, and the beauty of new beginnings. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to share it. Subscribe to Mountain Tales so you won't miss a moment of redemption or the stories waiting to unfold. Together, we can believe in the magic of second chances, each new encounter holding the promise of growth. Please confirm if this compressed version meets your expectations or if you would like to make any adjustments.